much of your time, I will move on to the next session, which is elite football. I will be introducing the speakers and would request them to join as I take their name. Mukul Chaudhary, CEO, Jamshedpur FC. Mandar Tamhane, CEO, Bengaluru FC. Malik Dugan, Marketing and Commercial Affairs Director, UAE Pro League. Ahmed Sheikh, CEO, Basundra Kings. Abhik Chatterjee, Operations Head, Odisha FC. Thangboy Singto, Technical Director, Hyderabad FC. Last but not least, the moderator for this session, Joe Morrison, a live sport broadcast professional with over 20 years experience with the BBC, Arab Radio and TV, Sony, ESPN, Star Hub 10 Sports and Facebook, a synonym with football and football fans. Joe.
Can everybody hear me? Yes? Good. Right. Are you sitting comfortably? We may begin now. It's good to see some familiar faces, and obviously we've got a couple joining us as well that I can see in front of me on the big screen. They'll be coming up. Malik, I know from the UAE. Good to see you, Malik. You'll be popping up soon as well. Since we're pressing for time, let's just get stuck straight into it. These guys sitting on the stage here, I have known for quite a few years in various capacities. So it's nice to see some familiar faces. And in my opinion, they're some of the most important people in Indian football. The reason is that they make the decisions in Indian football. So let's get underway. First of all, Mandar. We'll start at the far end there. Performance, elite level. We've heard the word elite football talked about a lot already this morning. We hear about it talked a lot in general, and it has been for years. If I was to ask you, if elite football in, say, Europe and the European clubs is a number of 10, where would you say Indian professional football at its top level is in comparison to that? Is it a 1, is it a 5, is it a 7?
I think it's definitely a 6 or a 7. I think we need to do a lot to reach to that elite level that we are speaking about. In the earlier session also we heard about the definition of elite and why is it considered here in Indian football. But I think the elite in Indian football is the elite in football. But if the standard of the elite in Indian football is to be compared with the elite abroad, then we know where we stand and what all work we need to do. So I think we are still far off. I think all of us here and in front have to do a lot many things for us to bridge that gap. And I think we are on the right track though.
And what are the areas that you think need to be focused on? If I was to ask you, in fact, I'll not say areas, one, if you were to pick out one thing that you, with BFC, would focus on, what would be that one thing? Obviously, there's lots of areas, but what would be the one thing?
You know, I have always personally believed that for any team to be at the best, you need to invest in people. You need to invest in players and staff whom you would consider as your assets. And if you are able to create that kind of an environment in a team or a club, then I think on more occasions you'll be successful in whatever you do. So I just believe that in investing in people, whether it's on the pitch or off the pitch, is something I feel is very, very important for us to have a sustainable success across sports on and off the field.
Do you support that, Mukul? You're obviously a CEO. So you see every aspect of the business. Have you seen a sea change in players in particular being treated as assets in recent years rather than maybe 2-3 decades ago where they were just employees?
First of all, I agree with what Mandar mentioned. I'll just dive a little deeper. Of course, there were assets then and there are assets now. I have seen a lot of change though in terms of how we have evolved. Because in terms of infrastructure, things have changed drastically. What we used to see, say, about 15-20 years back in terms of infrastructure. I remember when I-League games were played in Bombay in particular, but could see, almost 22 players playing on the ground, while you had less than 11 on the stadium. From that to what we have reached today, it's quite a distance that we have turned out. So thanks to the fan for that. But at the same time, coming back to the elite player assets, yes, in terms of lot has to be done, but that doesn't mean the lot has not been done. One has traveled a distance, but we have much more to travel further down if you compare it with the European counterparts or otherwise.
How do you accelerate that journey? You're saying there's still a distance to travel. How do you accelerate? How do you speed that up?
So most important piece which I think which we need to focus on is probably the grassroots and the youth development. Now, one of the gentlemen had already mentioned that we produce so many engineers. Now we just have to replicate what we are doing in education. In India, if we can produce so many engineers, we actually are going through a 16-year education program. You can't produce a footballer overnight or in 3 years of training. You have to work on him. If you want to pursue a career, if you want to reach the excellence stage, then typically you have to invest right at the grassroots so he knows the right touches and the fundamentals. And when he comes to a stage where he has to be treated at the academy and the youth and the professional level, he can evolve accordingly. So I think we should start right at the kindergartens, coming at the primary school, to the high school, a same format. We don't have to invent it again. It's been done globally. We just have to replicate that in India, and I think we'll be getting there. Some form it has already started. It just has to accelerate in that form, and I think in another 10, 12 years, you'll have people who have trained for 10, 12 years who could reach that level easily.
Nothing on this stage happens without money. Nothing in the sport here in India happens without money. I think everybody's aware of that. And I'll just jump to you, Abhi. We were chatting, weren't we, in Dubai a month or two ago. Monetization of Indian football is so important. How does that expand? How do you open up new channels for monetization?
I think first of all, thank you everybody for having me here. The one thing that we all touched upon and you said is football requires money. And I think all the stakeholders in Indian football have to be commended because we are experiencing how much money intensive football really is from top to bottom. And a lot of stakeholders, we have to acknowledge, are putting in money without many returns because football is not as cash rich as cricket. So the investors and the stakeholders have to be commended. Now to open up additional avenues for monetization, and I was having this conversation a couple of days back with my grassroots and community team, is that unless you engage with the community, and by community I mean fans and people you want to turn into your fans in the future, people you want to buy your merchandise, people you want to buy tickets and come to the stadium, there has to be a more holistic approach wherein a lot of the activities you're doing is not just football based, but taking a larger interest in the community that you're serving. It can be, for example, we have a fantastic relationship with the government of Odisha who've really opened their doors for us and are supporting us in terms of giving us access to infrastructure. For example, all the FIFA level pitches that they maintain, we get to organize our grassroots programs there. We're interacting with parents on a daily basis. Because the World Cup is happening there, the Under-17 Women's World Cup is happening there, we're visiting a lot of schools for girls.
So that's reducing some of your costs, yeah?
That's reducing some of my costs, but it's also giving me access to people I want to, because we all have to accept we're a business at the end of the day, right? And you can only invest money once you get it back. So you have to encourage people to communicate with you, engage with you, with the prospect of them and their children later identifying you as something where they might spend an evening at a game or buy a jersey for their kids. It has to start at that level. And then of course there are other areas, but I feel community engagement is number one. And then an example for all of us in say Indian football is the great work that Kerala Blasters, for example, is doing with content. Because right now digital media is so accessible, and I've always been a fan of Bengaluru's social media team. They were sort of pioneers in that regard. The content you produce is also monetizable because you're reaching out to an audience beyond the city you are in, and I feel the audience is ripe for accepting that sort of content, and you can put a price tag on it, going forward as well.
Can I bring in Mr. Ahmed Sheikh here up on the screen? Just a similar question there, Ahmed, in terms of monetization. What's your take on it? How do you expand those revenue streams? I can see Ahmed, but can we see him on the screen? There we go.
Hello.
You're on
Hi.
camera, Ahmed.
Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to talk and to discuss all these things. I'll start with concentrating on the topic that Mr. Mandar said about the youth players, the youth academies, and bringing players in. So what happens is like in this region, like regarding in Bangladesh, Nepal, or India and Pakistan, Sri Lanka, in these kind of countries in the league system, the player contracts and more or less like 1 year contracts. It's more or less. Nobody goes for a long-term contract of the scheduling and all those things. So when we are working on with the youth and building new players from the youth structure, I think we can go for the different kind of payments that we have in football transfers, like solidarity payments and training compensation, which is a very complex thing, but it's very much achievable. And nowadays, FIFA is going to implement the FIFA clearinghouse, which is going to distribute the payments more systematically to the clubs who are producing the players. So as we all know that in the football world, the first and the most biggest investment that comes from with the football is the TV rights and then the player transfers. So the TV rights, all the clubs literally they get it with when they are playing in the league, ISL, I League, other leagues. But the player transfers, the solidarity payments, and the compensation, training compensation, that is not more or less structured in this region. So with the youth developments and the youth products that we have, if we have the contracts in such management, and we obey the regulation of the transfer and the status of the players, then the clubs or the academies will earn a huge amount of money with the player transfers. So this can be a good channel for all the clubs in this region to earn a lot of money, which is still not being utilized. And to concentrate on the topics said by Mr. Obik, which is a very great topic, saying that we need to do the digitalization of the fan engagement. Yes, nowadays we can see a few contents of like OTT platforms where they have inside footage of the club premises and the player engagements. The clubs can also do their own channels where they can actually do it with subscription base, so that they can have their data of the fans who are purchasing the content. For example, like it can be a training match which is not televised elsewhere, but they can see through the app or see through the app by purchasing the content. Like in the preseason games, like there are very much interest about how the new players are playing, or the training session, how the new players are doing the training. So this you can do subscription based to the fans, which they will purchase and obviously will be eager to watch the content. And also we can have like esports can be another part for a football club, because nowadays esports is getting very much popular and it's the next big thing. Even if you look at the FIFA equipment regulation, they have added like different clauses of esports player equipment regulation, which means FIFA is also looking into the equipments of the esports players very much. So the clubs can introduce a new area of esports players, where the players who are good, they can also get in touch with the clubs, and clubs can have their own players, and this can be a different channel which is not being utilized till now.
Can I just quickly come back to you, Mandar? Are you a little bit surprised at the how do I call it, the lack of maturity of the transfer market in Indian football right now, considering that the ISL has been going 8 years?
I would try to look at it in a more positive way, saying that it's now at least privy to the fact that there is revenue to be earned, which wasn't there previously. In the last 2 years, we have seen a lot of involvement of transfers initially, which was started, I think, with ATK Mohun Bagan, which brought this kind of a requirement, business model in Indian football. And I think now all of us are wanting to do that. And I can definitely say that for us this year, we had a very good transfer window in terms of revenue. And I think it will add a lot more. See, because coming to the financial landscape of Indian football, we mentioned Patricia earlier, where globally you also be involved with television. 80% of the revenues, if they are coming from broadcast, and if that model is not working in India, then it's all about cutting your losses. and cutting your losses in way of partnership, which Abhik mentioned, have a partnership with the government of Odisha where their infrastructure cost is probably minimized for them. So there are ways where you try to then cut down your losses. We mentioned him speaking about the digital aspect and how you monetize the digital aspect. So there are various ways then for revenue to come in, and I definitely believe that player transfer market and the revenue coming from it is going to be something which is going to be there for good for Indian football. Also, he touched based upon the fact of solidarity payment and training compensation, which the AIFF has started just past 2 years, which wasn't there before. So the people that are investing in youth development and grassroots, we have Mukul here with the Tata Football Academy. Hyderabad FC is also doing a very good job in terms of youth development. I think
is this, sorry to interrupt you, is this on top of the FIFA solidarity payments?
It's on top of the FIFA solidarity payment and the training compensation, where the AIFF has come with a rule where if a club from an ISL academy goes to an I-League or an ISL or a lower division, then till the age of 21, there is a certain amount of money per year, depending upon how many years he's been at the academy, for the clubs to earn. It's not much, but when you've got 25, 30, 40, 50 players coming out of their academy, then that gets multiplied, which is again an additional revenue for the club. So I think clubs that have invested in youth development meaningfully, and I would like to address it meaningfully, are definitely going to make a lot of revenue in the coming future. And now with Dr. Saji there, who understands the dynamics, I think he will give us much more monies through this solidarity and training compensation.
Much more, Shaji, much more.
Yeah, so
huge
I think,
amounts.
Yeah, no, I think it's something. It's a very good incentive for smaller academies also. It's not just
Absolutely.
about academies like ISL clubs or I-League clubs. Even small academies which are everywhere. If a kid from there goes to an ISL academy or an ISL or an I-League academy, there is revenues for them to earn also. And it goes. It's like if a smaller club academy boy goes to a bigger academy, he gets more money. And from a bigger academy boy, if he goes to a lower academy, they get obviously little money. So that means there's revenue stream for everyone there. And I think these revenue streams are definitely going to be useful to cut down the losses. I wouldn't say even make money is far away. Break even is still far away. It's just about cutting down the losses.
Can I just bring you in here, Tangboy, because you have been involved in the youth setup, haven't you? Do you think, on the back of what Mandar is saying, do you think that'll encourage a lot more youth development now that we have a monetary element to it across the board, not just with the ISL clubs?
Thank you, Joe. I think what Mandar touched upon is very relevant. Having started with I-League and now with ISL, in this 7 or 8 years time, well, without money, nothing happens. If you want to bring or go for trials across the country, you need money for that. Simple as that. If you want to bring the top young players to your club, there's money involved there. But the brighter side, as Mandar pointed rightly, is that now, if you have top talented players, of course, you might lose them. But on the other brighter side, you have money coming in, which you can streamline and invest on the lower youth teams you have. So that balance out a bit. Saying that, what I want to add today in this platform would be, grassroots football has grown, kids have started more playing football. But again, we need good teachers. Where are the good grassroots coaches in India? We have lots and lots of kids who love football, who wants to play. But at the end of the day, we need good teachers and good coaches at that level. So yeah, it's a big task going forward, but I'm more of a pitch guy on the field. I don't understand much of the business, but yes.
I normally see you in shorts and t-shirt, actually, Tangboy, not a suit.
I'm wearing this suit after 5 years probably, Joe, so I'm a little bit out of place. But at the end of the day, we are all here for the betterment of Indian football. So that's where we have to start, from the grassroots. And yes, and the more money, the better.
Absolutely. I just want to bring in Malik here. Malik, who's going to hopefully pop up on the big screen. Malik is heavily involved in the marketing side of football in the UAE, something which I know well, of course. And Malik, in particular, engagement. We've heard this morning a few times about digital, using digital resources and monetizing digital as well. What have you seen from your experience in the Pro League in the United Arab Emirates?
Good morning, Joe, and good morning for all your esteemed panelists. And of course, thank you for having me on the call today. We've seen, of course, not only in the UAE, but also on a global level, the importance of fans. Everybody basically is currently looking at them as a commodity, and everyone is fighting to capture for their attention. Their presence has a direct effect, not only on pitch performance, but also on commercial revenues, whether it is from match day sales, sponsorship, or broadcast rights, as also mentioned by your panelists today. And we understand that there are many factors that influence the life cycle of a fan in sports and dictate whether they will become a fan, a proper fan that endorses their team every match, or they basically trickle down to become a casual follower. And studies basically have summarized many factors, some factors that we don't have direct involvement in and we cannot change, like personality, for example, whether a person has the intrinsic or the extrinsic type motivator, because some of them will just become a fan and be basically endorsing their team regardless. There are environmental factors, like here, for example, in the UAE, being in a developing country, development brings diversity, it brings new things to do, and this can sometimes switch your fans from you, and then you need to basically be maintaining that engagement with them, and of course match the experience, whether it is positive or negative.
Is that your biggest challenge,
Utilization of digital, the utilization of data, we've seen it's really important. The Pro League adapted a centralized CRM system where we started doing fan profiling, we started pushing more content to our fan to basically ensure that they are coming to the matches, and also through active promotion, utilizing all available channels, whether they're social, they're broadcast, to also increase that awareness and ensure that all of those in the UAE that fit that targeting criteria know more of our product. And then, of course, community engagement, as mentioned by your esteemed panelists. The use of these touch lines to push the fans down the fan engagement funnel so that you can start getting them to purchase tickets, whether you want them to subscribe on social, utilize these metrics to show success and engagement, and of course, increasing TV viewership, because all of this cycle has a direct increase on monetization. This what dictates if sponsorships can be increased. This dictates of the value of broadcast rights. There are also a very important part, which is grassroots in youth engagement, whether it is through schools, through universities, and it is the secret ingredient to creating a pipeline of future fans. Also, what the Pro League has done is that we've created roadshows and fan zones that we call experiential marketing. We utilize the way of moving football from the stadium to community and use these engagement bonds, as we call them, as mining data, where we can take data of the fans that sometimes have never made it to the stadium and then start engaging with them continuously, educating them about us, about the clubs, and then trying to make sure that we bring them, have a clear call to action to basically bring them to the stadiums and start utilizing this data to whether you want to run an OTT platform, increasing subscriber, whether you want to increase match day revenues through direct sales from ticketing and food and beverage. And ultimately, the more people you have in the stadium, the more lucrative your product is, the more eyeballs are on it, and therefore basically the effect on sponsorship and broadcast rights.
Thank you, Malik. I want to come back to you, Mukul, because we always see sponsorship, especially in India, of football, comes from specific industries, legacy industries, let's call them. How do we move away from that? Can we move away from that? Should we be moving away from that?
We are at a stage where any kind of sponsorship is welcome. So,
True.
We can't be choosers that way. But at the same time, yes, what you're saying is right. We should engage and have more and more different sponsors coming in. Sometime back, we saw a motoring partner in Kia coming in. We had Tata Motors, which had come in, which were not there initially. So Tata Motors was attached with us. Now they're also attached with Goa. And that also shows an evolution that more and more brands are accepting football as a sport where they can leverage and garner their kind of eyeballs. Same is true with a banking partner which we recently got, which is SBI, which was never there before. So we are seeing a new genre coming in, and I think that will happen as we evolve. So we are at a different stage of evolution. Of course, we need different variety of sponsors and different industries to come in. It's just about happening. I think we'll get there in a while.
How do you lure them, without giving away trade secrets, Mandar, how do you lure businesses and companies and corporates who maybe have never been involved in either sponsoring or getting involved in terms of investment into football? They might have an experience in cricket, but not football. How do you lure them over?
No, I think sponsorship in the sports is probably correlated to the performance of the national team. And I think it's very important for Indian football, for all the clubs here, to ensure that our national team does well. And if we have the national team doing well, then that can be a vehicle for different brands to partner. You need to create role models also. You need to have a Chetri, you need to have a Gurpreet, you need to have a Sandesh Jingan for the brands to be excited to be partnering you. I can give you an example at JSW Sports. Neeraj Chopra is our athlete, and probably Neeraj is the biggest sporting personalities which brands are very wanting to be involved with. And earlier he was not nowhere in the picture. So if you are going to create these role models, if you're going to create, if you want the brands to come and support you, the team has to do well, the national team has to do well. You need to have individuals who are doing well at a global platform. So I think these are the factors that you need to definitely focus on. And obviously then fans play a very important role. You've got a club in Kerala where you see the kind of fans that they have.
Fabulous,
and that's something which obviously excites the brand to partner with. And we have got Byju's and all associated with Kerala Blasters, which is a huge thing for Indian football. So I think all these things collectively impact a lot of brands to be associated with the clubs. And I think it's responsibility of clubs like us to also make it worthwhile for them. We were talking about the digital space right across. That can be also a kind of a vehicle to drive the brand's presence right across the digital space, rather than just the jerseys or partnerships, etc.
Have you seen an increase? Obviously, to do all of this requires pairs of hands. Have you increased your team over the years since the inception? Well, obviously you were in I-League first before entering the ISL, but certainly since the inception of Bengaluru FC, have you had to increase your team to start to cater for all of these verticals?
Yeah, I think it's as I mentioned, you need good people to work with, and it goes on increasing the way the sport is growing, and I think we have increased. When we came into the I-League, just to give you an example, each team used to travel, and Mukul was also part of the I-League. We always had 4 or 5 staff traveling with the team. We had the head coach, we had an assistant coach, we had a physio, a team manager. These were the only 4 people that were traveling.
That was it?
Yeah, and that's it. And we have a coach here also who will know that the more support staff you have, it's more for the team and the players to know that they're well looked after. And when we were part of the I-League, we traveled with 11 people, which included your physios, your media managers, your analysts, your goalkeeping coach, your strength and conditioning coaches, your masseurs. So that's how it is, and that's how, unless and until you create that environment, create that structure, it's always going to be required. And this I'm talking on the pitch. Likewise, off the pitch also, we require a lot of personnel with the kind of demands that we are having in sport right now.
If you can just pass the microphone along to Abby, because during my time at Newcastle United, even though the brand was huge and the club was huge in the early 2000s, people always assumed the staff was huge. I mean, it was big probably by ISL terms, but not big in comparison to today. Are you seeing the same thing? You're a very busy guy. Are you finding that you have to have more and more help to deal with more and more elements that make up the modern football business, professional football business?
Yeah, absolutely, because what we have to understand that specific skill sets are needed. When I started off in Indian Super League, the time there was that you had maybe one person multitasking, doing 3 or 4 jobs, because that's what the understanding was, and there wasn't enough knowledge to pass around to know that you needed specific skill sets. But now people have understood that to serve a particular role, and we're talking about sponsorships, and sponsorships has 2 sides. One is the guy who sells, then there is a guy who services the client. And those are two specific skill sets which sometimes one person doesn't have. And in order to service a sponsor, you need to have one person taking care of them, and you need to have one person who's selling to them. So with evolution in Indian football, of course, at our club, and this is a conversation we have with our owners as well, to make them understand and also make them privy to what the demands of the market are, from the sponsor side, from the fan side, etc. So you need to have people having those specific skill sets doing that job, then the outcome is better. Instead of being someone maybe who's a jack of all trades, might not be able to provide the right input at the right time to give a better result. So we've seen that evolution, we recognize that, and we feel there are people who specialize to do a certain job that are needed.
Okay, I'm going to do something a little bit different here. It's a yes or no answer, and I just want you to pass the microphone along to the end, and then once it gets to the end, I'll ask you a reason why. Promotion and relegation in Indian football, yes or no?
Yes.
Tangboy?
Yes.
Mukul?
Yes.
100% yes.
Right. Thank you. Right. The follow-up to that is, can it be sustained financially?
Right now we are sustaining even with the losses, so I don't think it would be any much different. So I think we have to try and take that direction for us to know that. Unless and until we take that direction and just fear about something that's probably going to happen, I don't think we'll ever go into that direction. So I think promotion relegation is essential, and I think we will soon be having that.
I want to bring, thank you, Manda. I just want to bring Mr. Ahmed Sheikh back in here and just ask him specifically about the brand value of the Kings and the things that you've done to elevate that brand value in particular.
Yes, the first thing that is that in 2018, first we came in Bangladesh Premier League for the first time. So we were a new club, so we had to make a statement. So our first idea was to bring a player who will have such an exposure which will be a good brand value to the fans. So first what we did is like we signed Daniel Colindres, who just returned from the 2018 World Cup from Russia. He was a Costa Rican player and he played a few matches for the Costa Rican national team. So our first idea was to bring someone like that kind of a profile. So in Bangladesh, we did his profiling in the sense that there is one World Cupper who is coming to Bangladesh to play for football, for a football club in Bangladesh. So like in the recent past history in Bangladesh, no football World Cup player played in Bangladesh. So it was a big news for the whole country, and they catched it very well. And we also used a new term saying the World Cupper who is playing in Bangladesh. So that elevated the first brand value into the minds of the fans and the sponsors, that who is this guy coming in Bangladesh? It was never done before. So at first we did that, and then it was our main target was to play entertaining football, because without the performance in the field, the fans will not stay much longer with you. So when a new team is coming in and they're playing attractive brand of football with the players with a good brand value and good image, then obviously the brand got elevated. So now after 2-3 years, we are now like concentrating more on the infrastructure side. We have our new stadium, which is completely owned by the Bosundhara Kings, like what the European clubs do. They have their own stadium, so we also build our own stadium. It's almost 70% done, and the next season it will be completed. So we will be able to play all our national and international matches. So building a new stadium properly owned by the football club is another brand value that is elevating our brand in the market. And with that, we are signing players from the top league of Brazil, Fluminense club. So these kind of signings with the national players who are participating in the national team. So these are the ways that we are like creating the player profile, because they are the heroes. And with these, our brand is all automatically getting elevated with the players and the establishments that we are doing.
Can I just ask you a quick question on the back of that? Jamal Bhuyan, who's a very good friend of mine, how much is football, and you in particular, benefited? We talked before just about how important, Mandar mentioned it, as did others, about how important the national team is to generate more monetization. have you benefited, and how much do you think you've benefited from having this huge icon in Bangladesh of Jamal Bhuiyan?
Yes,
Can you
Jamal
put a
Bhuiyan
figure
is
on it? Can you put a value on it?
National hero, I might say. Even though he plays for one of our rivals, but his interest and his brand value is more than a cricket player. Sometimes I say, because fans are getting crazy every day when they meet him.
But the Kings
So
have
what
benefited,
happens
yes?
is I obviously benefited, because the national team players, when we are playing against Jamal, we are used to brand it like this, like we are playing against Jamal as a team, it's a Jamal Bhuiyan's team versus Daniel Collinger's team. Then the atmosphere gets strengthened up, the brand value gets strengthened up. So we also at times, from a rival point of view, used Jamal's brand to elevate the brand of ours. So this is how we work. I think there are 10 national team players in our team at this moment. So we also promote them in pre-match day or match day advertisements. So this way, the national team players are elevating our brand very much.
Thank you. Right, we're going to wrap this up pretty soon, and I just want to ask finally about the development of the games in particular here in India. It's always been a particular bone of contention, and it's great, and I'll be very interested not only to get the thoughts of Shaji, but the new president as well, about the number of matches that are played. And I don't know who's got the microphone. Mandar, well, you go first, Mandar, if you've got the microphone. It's always been an issue, hasn't it? And certainly in recent years. How do we change that? First of all, are there enough games being played, whether it be at youth level or at senior level?
No, I think at a youth level, certainly not. We are way away from even 50% of what they probably need to play. I was just having a chat with Saji right now. If you're under 13, under 15, under 18, youth I League is there. We are playing only 10 or 12 matches. That too if we reach to the final round. And then in the initial round, you're playing against the local teams, which are not very competitive. So
not challenging enough.
Not challenging enough. So you're practically playing only 6 or 7 games throughout the year in terms of the competitive that they're getting to play. And you are looking at least 40-50 games for them throughout the year if you're looking at that development of these players to come and start moving up into your senior teams or in various other senior teams. So I think definitely there is a big requirement of more number of games at youth level. In terms of the senior level, I think, yes, of course we need more games. We have to be somewhere close to 40 to 45 games for them also. Yes, we have got an international calendar also to keep in mind that you don't burn the players, but I think it is necessary for the sport to grow in our country that we have more number of games even at the senior level. I think right now whatever we are playing is still a bit less, but the new format that now we have to follow in terms of fulfilling the minimum required games to be played for us to be eligible to play in the AFC Champions League. So this year we are going to have almost 27 to 28 minimum games that all clubs will be playing. So I think that's a good start, but still we can increase that numbers in the coming future.
Just before you pass the microphone along there, I want to bring Malik back in here, because you would have to say, Malik, in the UAE that there are enough games being played. The challenge is more the climate, isn't it? The season is almost as long as Europe, but there's such a as I know from just leaving yesterday Dubai, it is so oppressive, isn't it, at the moment, the climate. So how do you balance that with getting the right number of games without pushing the players to a medical limit?
Thanks for the question, Joe. It's actually a very valid question. As you've mentioned, unfortunately, the start of our season coincides here with the UAE with probably the hottest weather. There are many factors that our technical and operations team take into account. And also this season is a little bit special, let's say, because of the World Cup. There's a stoppage in November, which is usually the period where we can get better climate, but now we're going to have to condense the matches. So even though it is a little bit harder now, but they're going to still have to be playing more matches to compensate that stoppage time to ensure that we are hitting the end of our season within the expected timelines. It is a hard job. They try to maintain as much as possible the well-being of the players and not pushing them too much to avoid injuries. So yeah, it's not as easy as it looks.
Are you worried, Malik, about the players this season because we have that stoppage and because you're going to have to pack so many games into a short space of time?
Of course, there'll be a lot of effect on the players, and matches needs to be again constructed in a way where we can allow them more rest, but unfortunately we can't. So it will be interesting. And of course, because of the rivalries from last season, we've seen that all of these clubs are currently coming in full force to start. So we need to be also careful on the status of the player as we move further within the league and the matches.
Thank you, Malik. Mukul, just to you as well, the number of games, how do you feel about it?
Of course, I think when the ISL had started, we had close to 2.5 months of an event. From that, one has moved to almost 3 months, 4 months. But what you need is actually closer to, of course, we need more games. We should move from 11 to at least 16 in some coming years. So that will give you more games. Of course, we have now 2 cup tournaments. One is the Durand Cup and the Super Cup. But the league itself has to stretch a bit. And of course, like Mandar mentioned, at youth level, you hardly have any tournaments which can be played. And that's something that is affecting our football, because that's where your elite players are coming in.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mukul. Are you more concerned about the lack of games at youth level than at senior level?
Yes. It's basically in terms of you have a good graduate, that's when you have a good professional. That's what it should be. So while you need more games at the top, you have to bring him up and have him evolved in the same manner and have to have that quality. Otherwise, you'll continue to depend on foreign players the way you do today. So if you want your own players to evolve, you have to better the quality, and that could happen only with more games and more exposure and more competitive exposure, so to see, more precisely.
Do you feel the same, Tangboy? Obviously, you're involved, I was going to say at grassroots level, you're involved actually on the grass level as well. But are you seeing that? Are you seeing players that you think could develop a lot quicker if only they were getting back-to-back matches?
I think are you guys getting bored there? Hello? Good. In relation to matches, one very pertinent answer I got from a boy, I think many of us know that is Dheeraj Morangthem. He's the goalkeeper with FC Goa. I just spoke to him a few days just to get the pulse of the number of matches he played when he was playing for India in 2017 World Cup. In the preparation, he told me that he had played around 40 to 45 games.
Wow.
That's what the government of India and what's the national team have given him. Going back to ISL, I think in 4 seasons he played 38 games, sort of, plus minus. So that shows that the number of games, I think it's very, very important. Mandar and Mukul has touched on the youth level. One good thing this year happened was the Development League. The Development League really helped us, the ISL clubs, to test, to see the young players perform from where they can graduate to the first team. And if you see the national team, even in India, I think Shaji knows very well, they play less games compared to the Europe. Europe, maybe they play 55 to 60 games because the number of teams are more. Here, I think in ISL you play 20 league games, and if you qualify, maybe 3 or 4.
That's if you go to the final, yeah.
Yeah, if you go to the final, and if you're a national team player, you're lucky, maybe you play another FIFA calendar matches 4 or 5 in a year. So that's very less. We need more of that. But the good thing again, the Durand Cup as part of fulfillment of criteria, and now the Super Cup happening, I think that sort of will balance out the number of matches, but yes, we need more. For the kids, definitely more matches is important. It's very, very less. Mandar touched upon the number of games they play, maybe 10, 15, which is not enough. And the clubs are investing on the youth teams. Where are the matches for them? Yeah.
Did that, if you can just pass the microphone to Mandar there, did that affect your decision making in terms of the squad that you sent to the Durand Cup?
No, I mean Durand Cup. Obviously, we were keen with the new coach to have a new, the full team going. But what is important is when we had the under-18s, we didn't have the reserve team. The conversion of the under-18 boys from under-18 to the senior team is maybe 1 or 2 in a squad of 25, where they are the 22nd or the 24th. So if the conversion of the player development is going to be that little, then the investment that we are doing at a youth is not justified. So then we thought about having a reserve team or a B team as we call it to cushion or the bridge that gap where we can have more players getting converted or getting an opportunity to get converted to the BFC senior team or maybe any other team where they go for. So last year amongst the 26 Indian boys that were registered for the ISL, excluding the 6 foreigners, so 26 Indian boys, we had 11 boys from the academy. So I think that can only happen if you are going to give them more competition to develop, for the coaches to assess them through competition rather than just playing 8 or 9 games. And it's been 3 years since we have formed this reserve team. In the first year, we were able to clock 22 games. In the second year, we were able to clock 36 games. And in the third year, I would say 2 years from now, it's 2019-20 season before the pandemic started, we clocked 41 games for the reserve team. And that includes the local league, that includes competition, just local competitions in Kashmir or in Sikkim Gold Club, which are grade A tournaments. And then you have the second division I League where the AIFF was kind enough to allow clubs having the B team to participate in the second division I League.
So and similar to La Liga's Segunda division, where they can have a secondary team.
Exactly. And now, of course, we have the developmental league that we are speaking about. So giving that kind of volume of games to the players, we'll definitely see a lot of players developed, not just for the clubs, but also for the national.
If you can just pass the microphone to Abi, I just want to get the final word from you, Abi, because on the back of that conversation, the number of games, do you think by the promotion and relegation, by including more teams in the ISL, the coach himself will be under less pressure to deliver results in a very short span of time, and therefore will be able to introduce more of the youngsters into the playing team to give them minutes? Do you think you'll see that, or do you think that won't come?
No, definitely. If the number of games are increasing, of course it impacts. It's like a stack of cards. You know, the way they fall, it'll of course help the clubs, it'll help the coaches. But just going a bit back, because like everybody else, I'm a little concerned about the number of games we're playing at youth level. And we had a roundtable meeting with the government of Odisha, with Mr. Vinil Krishna, who's the Secretary for Sport, and the conversation there was, how do we increase the number of games for the 13, 15, 18s and the reserve team? We have a reserve team as well. And the innovation that came out of it was that we're planning to launch a schools league first in the next month. But what the government also said is, and mind you, we've just launched a women's team as well, so that factors in, because the Indian Women's League, 1 month. Where do they get the rest of the games from? So because the female players in our team, we get some of the best from the state, because Odisha is of course like a talent hub for the best female talent in the country. They said, why don't you take the women's team, we can fuse it with our state team and make them play more games, because the state national championships are up. That way we're giving you 10 extra games. And I said, why don't we do the same for a reserve team? We can take the Santosh Trophy team, fuse it with the reserve team, give them more games. So there has to be innovation on our part as well, wherein we have a stakeholder who's interested in such innovative measures. There you sort of break the red tape a bit, you come together and you create some solutions, then you have the developmental league, etc. That adds up to a lot of games. So now, for the women's team as well, which we are investing considerably in, they get more than just the 1 month Indian Women's League. They get around, say, 25 games, which is a start. And with the men's team, of course, the only way forward is to add more teams. That's the natural progression. And if you're playing around 35, 38 games a year, I think that's a better start to and a way to progress further.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I think we've only scratched the surface of this particular topic of elite football, but thank you to Abi, to Tangboy, to Mukul and to Mandar, and also to Malik and Ahmed, who have joined us from digitally from abroad. Thank you very much, and give them all a round of applause.